There's a moment, maybe it's happening right now, when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back at you. Not because your appearance has changed, but because something deeper has shifted. The light in your eyes seems dimmer. The confidence you once carried feels like a distant memory. The dreams you used to chase have been replaced by routines you never wanted. You go through the motions. You smile when you're supposed to. You say you're fine when people ask, but inside there's a quiet voice asking, when did I lose myself? And how do I find my way back? If you're listening to this, chances are you know that feeling. Maybe you've been living someone else's version of your life for so long that you've forgotten what your own version looks like. Maybe a major life transition, a breakup, a career change, a loss, becoming a parent, moving to a new place, has left you feeling disconnected from who you used to be. Or maybe the loss happened so gradually that you didn't even notice. Small compromises turned into bigger ones. Little silences became permanent. You adjusted, adapted, and accommodated until one day you woke up and realized, I don't know who I am anymore. Here's what I want you to understand right from the start. You are not broken. You are not beyond repair, and you haven't lost yourself permanently. What you're experiencing is something deeply human, a disconnection from your authentic self. And while it feels isolating and overwhelming, it's also an invitation to rediscover who you are beneath all the layers of expectation, conditioning, and compromise. This audiobook is your guide on that journey back to yourself. Not to who you were at 20, or who your parents wanted you to be, or who your culture says you should be, but to who you actually are, underneath all of that. Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to explore why people lose themselves, how that loss manifests, and most importantly, the practical, psychological, and spiritual practices that help you reconnect with your authentic self. You'll learn how to identify what's truly yours versus what you've absorbed from others, how to rebuild trust with yourself after years of self-abandonment, how to set boundaries that protect your authenticity, how to navigate the grief of letting go of old versions of yourself, and how to construct a life that actually fits who you are. This isn't a quick fix. Finding yourself again is a process, not a destination. But it's a process that changes everything. Because when you reconnect with your authentic self, you stop living in constant inner conflict. You stop seeking external validation to feel whole. You betray yourself to keep the peace. You start making decisions from a place of clarity rather than confusion. You start building relationships based on genuine connection rather than performance. You start creating a life that feels like yours. So if you're ready, if you're tired of feeling lost and ready to come home to yourself, let's begin. Because the person you're looking for, they've been waiting for you all along. Chapter 1. Understanding the Loss. How we become strangers to ourselves. Before you can find yourself again, you need to understand how you got lost in the first place. Most people don't lose themselves overnight. It's not a single dramatic event that severs you from your authentic self. It's a gradual erosion that happens through 1,000 small moments of self-abandonment. Let me explain what I mean. The roots of self-loss. You were born authentic. As a child, you knew what you liked and didn't like. You expressed emotions freely. You pursued what interested you without questioning whether it was appropriate. You were unfiltered, uninhibited, fully yourself. Then socialization began. Your parents, well-meaning as they were, started shaping you. Don't cry, be polite, stop being so loud, you should want this. These messages taught you that your natural self wasn't quite acceptable, that love and belonging required adjustment. School reinforced this. Sit still, follow the rules, fit in. Don't stand out too much. Value what we tell you to value. Success looks like this, failure looks like that. Culture added another layer. Gender norms told you how to behave based on anatomy. Religious or philosophical frameworks prescribed what you should believe. Social hierarchies showed you where you belonged. Media bombarded you with images of who you should aspire to become. None of this was necessarily malicious. These systems exist to create social cohesion, to pass down values, to maintain order. But in the process, they require you to suppress parts of yourself that don't fit the mold. And you learned. You learned to perform. You learned which parts of yourself were acceptable and which needed to be hidden. You learned to read the room, to adjust your personality based on context, to become what others needed you to be. This is called the false self, a concept developed by psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. The false self is the adaptive persona you construct to navigate the world safely. It's not entirely fake, it contains real parts of you, but it's strategic rather than authentic. It's designed for survival and acceptance, not self-expression. For some people, the gap between their false self and authentic self remains small. They're fortunate enough to grow up in environments that mostly accept who they truly are. For others, that gap becomes a chasm. They spend so much energy maintaining the performance that they lose touch with what's real underneath. Common ways people lose themselves. Let me walk you through the most common pathways to self-loss. Through relationships. You meet someone who seems to complete you. Gradually, you begin adjusting. Small things at first. You watch shows you don't really enjoy because they love them. You spend time with their friends instead of yours. You downplay your ambitions because they feel threatened. You adopt their political views to avoid conflict. Years pass. The relationship becomes your entire identity. You're no longer an individual. You're half of a unit. And when you try to remember what you liked before them, what you wanted before them, what you believed before them, you come up blank. This happens in romantic relationships, but also with friends, family, and even colleagues. Anytime you consistently prioritize someone else's comfort over your own authenticity, you lose a piece of yourself. Through career. You take a job for practical reasons. Money, stability, prestige, parental approval. It's temporary, you tell yourself, just until you figure out what you really want to do. But the years accumulate, the golden handcuffs tighten. You become the role. Your LinkedIn profile becomes your identity. People know you as the lawyer or the consultant or the manager, and you forget that you're more than your career title. You've lost yourself to professional expectations, corporate culture, and the assumption that your career defines your worth. Through trauma, something painful happens. Abuse, loss, betrayal, illness, disaster. To survive it, you shut down parts of yourself. You build walls. You develop coping mechanisms that helped you endure, but now prevent you from living fully. You become hypervigilant or numb. You disconnect from your body because it carries painful memories. You suppress emotions because feeling anything feels dangerous. You create rigid rules to maintain a sense of control. Years later, you're safe from the original threat, but you're still living in survival mode. The protective mechanisms that saved you have now become a prison.
Through parenthood, you become a parent, and suddenly your entire existence revolves around another human being. Your needs become secondary. Your sleep, your time, your body, your identity, all absorbed into the demands of caregiving. For some, this is temporary, but for others, especially primary caregivers who don't have adequate support, the loss becomes permanent. They stop being a person and become only mom or dad. Their interests fade, their friendships disappear, their sense of self dissolves into the needs of their children. Through cultural displacement, you move to a new country, a new culture, a new social context. To belong, to succeed, to be accepted, you adapt. You change how you speak, how you dress, what you value. You perform a version of yourself that fits the new environment. But in translation, something essential gets lost. You're not quite who you were before, and you're not quite who this place wants you to be. You exist in a liminal space, belonging nowhere fully, including within yourself. through chronic people-pleasing. You've spent so long managing other people's emotions, anticipating their needs, and avoiding their disappointment that you have no idea what you actually want. You've become a chameleon, shifting to match whatever the situation requires. When someone asks what you want for dinner, you genuinely don't know. When someone asks what makes you happy, you draw a blank. You've spent so much energy on external approval that you've lost connection to your internal compass. The experience of being lost. How do you know when you've lost yourself? Here are the signs. You feel numb or emotionally flat, like you're going through the motions without actually living. You can't make decisions, even small ones, because you don't trust your own judgment. You feel like a fraud, constantly performing rather than being. You're exhausted from maintaining the facade of having it together. You feel invisible, like people see the role you play but not the person you are. You don't recognize your own reflection, not physically, but energetically. You can't name what brings you joy because you've forgotten how joy feels. You resent the life you've built but feel trapped in it. You feel disconnected from your body, your emotions, your desires. If any of this resonates, you're in the right place, because the first step to finding yourself again is acknowledging that you're lost, and you've just taken that step. Chapter 2. The Archaeology of Self, Excavating Who You Really Are. Finding yourself again isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and adaptation. Think of this process as archaeology. Your authentic self is buried under years of accumulated sediment, other people's expectations, cultural programming, protective mechanisms, false beliefs. Your job is to carefully excavate, to dig through those layers and rediscover what's real. Identifying what's yours versus what's borrowed. The first challenge in finding yourself is distinguishing between what's authentically yours and what you've absorbed from others. Many of your beliefs, values, preferences, and goals aren't actually yours. They're inherited, borrowed, or imposed, and you've been carrying them so long that they feel like part of your identity. Here's how to start separating the two. The origin question. For any belief, value, or goal, ask, where did this come from? You believe you should be married by a certain age. Where did that belief originate? Your parents? Your culture? Social media? You value financial security above all else. When did you adopt that value? Was it after experiencing poverty? Was it modeled by someone you admired? Was it a response to feeling powerless? You want to become a doctor. Is that your dream, or is it something someone else wanted for you? Trace each significant belief or goal back to its source. If the origin is external and you never consciously chose to adopt it, it might not be authentically yours. The energy test. Pay attention to how different activities, relationships, and pursuits make you feel. What energizes you? What drains you? What makes time disappear because you're so engaged? What makes every minute feel like an hour? Your authentic self is drawn towards things that create energy, flow, and aliveness. Your false self operates from obligation, should, and duty. If you're doing something primarily because you should, it's probably not aligned with your authentic self. The no audience test. Imagine your life with no audience, no social media, no one to impress, no one to please, no one watching or judging. What would you do differently? What would you stop doing? What would you start? The things that remain important, even with no external validation, those are more likely to be authentically yours. Reconnecting with your younger self. One of the most powerful ways to find yourself again is to reconnect with who you were before the world told you who to be. Childhood loves. What did you love as a child? What activities made you lose track of time? What fascinated you? What did you do for pure joy with no external reward? These childhood passions often point to your authentic interests and natural inclinations, not because you should literally return to those activities, but because they reveal something about your essential nature. If you loved building things, perhaps creativity and construction are core to who you are. If you loved storytelling, perhaps narrative and meaning-making are central to your authentic self.
Before you learned to edit yourself, what was your natural temperament? Were you bold or cautious, introverted or extroverted, analytical or intuitive, structured or spontaneous? Somewhere along the way, you might have learned to suppress your natural temperament because it wasn't valued in your environment. The loud child learned to be quiet. The sensitive child learned to toughen up. The creative child learned to be practical. Reconnect with that preconditioning personality. It's still in there, just buried. Reclaiming lost parts. Think of the parts of yourself you've suppressed or abandoned. The artist you stopped being when you chose a practical career. The athlete you gave up when injury struck. The adventurer you buried under responsibility. The dreamer you silenced for being unrealistic. These aren't gone. They're dormant, and they're waiting to be integrated back into your life, perhaps in different forms than before, but still essential to who you are. Exploring your core values. Values are the principles that guide how you want to live, but many people are living by values they never consciously chose. Common inherited values: achievement, status, wealth, from capitalist culture; sacrifice, duty, loyalty, from family systems; conformity, tradition, stability, from conservative environments; rebellion, freedom, individualism, sometimes as reaction to authority. None of these are inherently wrong, but they might not be yours. Discovering your authentic values. Ask yourself, if you could design a life with no constraints, no need for money, no judgment from others, no fear of failure, what would matter most? Would you prioritize connection and community, creative expression, learning and growth, adventure and novelty, peace and simplicity, service and contribution, beauty and aesthetics, justice and fairness, autonomy and independence, pleasure and enjoyment? Your authentic values are the ones that resonate at a gut level, not just intellectually. They're the principles you're willing to make sacrifices for, not out of obligation, but because honoring them feels essential to living well. Listening to your body. Your body holds wisdom that your mind often ignores or overrides. Learning to listen to your body is essential for finding yourself again. Somatic signals. Your body communicates through sensation: tightness, openness, heaviness, lightness, tension, relaxation, nausea, warmth, cold, energy, fatigue. When you're around certain people, how does your body feel? Does it relax or tighten, open or contract? When you consider certain decisions, what physical sensations arise? Excitement in your chest? Dread in your stomach? Lightness? Heaviness? Your body often knows your truth before your mind accepts it. Start paying attention to these signals. The authentic yes and no. A genuine yes feels like expansion in your body, energy, aliveness. Even if there's nervousness, there's also excitement. A genuine no might feel like contraction, but it's clean, clear. There's relief in honoring it. Compare this to the obligatory yes, the one that comes with dread, resentment, or heaviness, or the people-pleasing no, the one that comes with guilt, fear, or uncertainty. Learn to distinguish between these. Your body knows the difference even when your mind tries to rationalize. The practice of self-inquiry.
Finding yourself requires asking better questions and sitting with them long enough to receive real answers. Daily self-inquiry questions. What do I actually want right now, beneath what I think I should want? What am I pretending not to know? What would I do if I weren't afraid? What am I tolerating that I shouldn't? What brings me alive? What am I grieving? What truth am I avoiding? Who would I be if I weren't performing? Don't rush to answer these. Sit with them. Journal about them. Let the answers emerge over time. The excavation process. Finding yourself is not a linear path. It's messy, confusing, and sometimes painful. You'll uncover things you've buried for good reasons. You'll face truths you've been avoiding. You'll realize you've been living a life that doesn't fit. That discomfort is part of the process. Don't run from it. Lean into it. The discomfort means you're getting closer to something real. As you excavate, you might discover that the relationship you've been clinging to is suffocating your authentic self, that the career you've built is draining your life force, that the version of yourself you present to the world is exhausting to maintain, that the beliefs you've held for years don't actually serve you. These realizations are painful, but they're also liberating, because once you see the truth clearly, you can start making different choices. You're not building a new self. You're rediscovering the self that's been there all along, patiently waiting beneath the rubble of who you thought you had to be.
Chapter 3. The Grief of Letting Go. Mourning the versions of yourself you've outgrown. Finding yourself again requires letting go of the versions of yourself that no longer fit. And that letting go is a form of grief. Most people don't acknowledge this grief. They power through. They focus on the positive, the new beginning, the fresh start, the transformation. But you can't authentically move forward without honoring what you're leaving behind. Even when you're leaving behind versions of yourself that weren't truly you, there's still loss involved. What you're grieving. The identity you built. You spent years constructing a particular identity. Maybe you were the successful one in your family, the reliable friend, the perfect parent, the corporate climber, the caretaker. That identity gave you a sense of place in the world. People knew what to expect from you. You knew what to expect from yourself. Now, as you reconnect with your authentic self, that identity no longer fits. And even though it was limiting, letting it go is disorienting. Who are you if you're not the person everyone expects you to be? The relationships that required your false self. Some relationships in your life exist because of who you've been pretending to be, not who you actually are. The friend who bonded with you over complaining about life but won't know how to relate to you once you start focusing on growth. The partner who fell in love with your accommodating nature but feels threatened by your newfound boundaries. The family that needs you to play a certain role in their system but resists when you step out of that role. As you become more authentic, some relationships won't survive. That's a loss, even when those relationships weren't healthy. The future you imagined. You had a vision of how your life would unfold. Maybe it was the vision you were handed: marriage, kids, house, career, retirement. Maybe it was one you constructed yourself. Finding yourself again often means releasing that vision because it was never really yours, or it was yours at one time, but you've changed. Grieving the future you're not going to have is harder than it sounds. It's mourning possibility, mourning the road not taken, mourning what might have been if you'd known yourself better sooner. The time you lost. When you realize you've been living inauthentically for years, maybe decades, there's grief for the time you can't get back. The experiences you missed while performing, the relationships you didn't pursue because they didn't fit your constructed identity, the dreams you shelved because they weren't realistic.
You can't reclaim that time, and sitting with that truth hurts. The innocence of not knowing. There's a certain comfort in not questioning your life, in believing the story you've been telling yourself, in not looking too deeply at whether you're actually happy. Once you start the process of finding yourself, you can't unknow what you discover. You lose the innocence of unconscious living. And sometimes you'll miss it. You'll miss the simplicity of just going through the motions without questioning everything. The simplicity of just going through the motions without questioning everything. The simplicity of just going through the motions without questioning everything. The stages of grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These don't happen linearly, and not everyone experiences all of them, but they're useful for understanding what you might feel as you let go of old versions of yourself. Denial. I'm fine. I don't need to change anything. My life is good enough. This is the resistance that comes before you fully accept that transformation is necessary. You might intellectually know you've lost yourself, but emotionally you're not ready to face what that means. Anger. I'm angry at myself for losing so much time. I'm angry at the people who shaped me into someone I'm not. I'm angry at the systems that forced me to conform. Anger is a natural part of this process. You're allowed to feel it. You're allowed to be furious at the years you spent living inauthentically. But don't get stuck in blame. Feel the anger, express it safely, and then use it as fuel for change. Bargaining. Maybe I can keep most of my current life and just make small adjustments. Maybe I don't need to change that much. Maybe I can be authentic in some areas but keep performing in others. Bargaining is trying to negotiate with reality, trying to find a middle ground that doesn't require the full discomfort of transformation. Sometimes small adjustments are enough, but often real change requires bigger shifts than we initially want to admit. Depression. What's the point? I've wasted so much time. It's too late to start over. I'm too old, too tired, too stuck. This is the despair that comes when you fully face what you've lost and feel overwhelmed by what finding yourself again will require. If you find yourself here, please be gentle. This is not weakness. This is your psyche processing significant loss. It will pass. Acceptance. I can't change the past, but I can change how I move forward. I can honor who I've been while becoming who I'm meant to be. Acceptance doesn't mean happiness. It means making peace with reality so you can work with it instead of against it. Honoring the grief. Our culture doesn't handle grief well. We're told to be strong, to move on, to focus on the positive. But suppressing grief doesn't make it go away. It just makes it leak out in other ways, as numbness, anxiety, depression, or physical illness. Here's how to honor this grief. Name what you're losing. Get specific. Write it down. Say it out loud. Acknowledge the full scope of what you're leaving behind. Feel the feelings without judgment. Grief comes in waves. Sometimes you'll feel fine. Sometimes you'll be unexpectedly overcome with sadness. Both are normal. Create rituals of release. Write letters to old versions of yourself. Burn them. Bury symbols of the life you're leaving behind. Mark the transition consciously. Seek support. Talk to people who understand transformation. Work with a therapist. Join communities of people on similar journeys. You don't have to grieve alone. Be patient with the timeline. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. You can't rush it. Give yourself permission to take as long as you need.
Here's what's beautiful and strange about this grief. You're mourning parts of yourself you're happy to release. You're sad about leaving behind your people-pleasing tendencies, even though they've been exhausting you. You're grieving the loss of a relationship, even though it was suffocating you. You're mourning the career you're walking away from, even though it was draining your soul. This is the paradox. You can simultaneously be grateful for the change and sad about what it costs. Both feelings can be true at once. Don't try to resolve the contradiction. Just hold both truths gently. What lies beyond grief? Grief is not the end of the journey. It's the transition point between who you were and who you're becoming. On the other side of grief is space, spaciousness for new possibilities, freedom to choose differently, permission to be yourself without apology. The grief clears out what's no longer serving you, making room for what's authentic to grow. So if you're in the grief right now, know this: you're not stuck, you're not broken. You're in the sacred process of release that must happen before rebirth. Feel it, honor it, trust it. And when you're ready, you'll move through it into the next phase of finding yourself again. Chapter 4. Rebuilding Trust with Yourself, the Foundation of Authenticity. One of the most devastating consequences of losing yourself is losing trust in yourself. You've made promises to yourself that you didn't keep. You've ignored your intuition and paid the price. You've betrayed your own needs to keep the peace. You've silenced your truth to maintain relationships. After years of this self-abandonment, you stop trusting your own judgment. You second-guess every decision. You seek external validation because you don't trust your internal compass. Finding yourself again requires rebuilding that trust. And trust, once broken, must be earned back, even from yourself. Understanding self-trust. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that you can rely on yourself, that you'll honor your commitments to yourself, that you'll listen to your intuition, that you'll protect your well-being, that you'll show up for yourself even when it's difficult. When you trust yourself, decision-making becomes clearer. You don't need everyone's approval because you trust your own judgment. You don't get paralyzed by options because you trust you'll handle whatever choice you make. On the other hand, when you don't trust yourself, everything becomes harder. Every decision feels massive. Every choice triggers doubt. You constantly seek reassurance from others because you don't trust your own instincts. How self-trust gets broken. Self-trust erodes through repeated patterns of self-betrayal. Ignoring your intuition. Your gut tells you something is wrong with a relationship, but you ignore it because you don't want to be alone. Your body tells you you're exhausted, but you push through because productivity is more important. Your heart tells you this career path isn't right, but you stay because you've already invested so much. Every time you override your inner knowing, you send yourself the message, I can't trust what I feel. Breaking promises to yourself. You tell yourself you'll start exercising tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, and you don't. This happens repeatedly until you stop believing your own commitments. You promise you'll finally leave that toxic job. Years pass, you're still there. You commit to setting boundaries, but when the moment comes, you cave. Each broken promise to yourself reinforces the belief, I can't count on me. Abandoning yourself in relationships. You know you need to leave, but you stay. You know you deserve better treatment, but you accept less. You know you need to speak up, but you stay silent. You choose someone else's comfort over your own truth so many times that you forget your truth matters. Making decisions from fear instead of alignment. You choose the safe option over the authentic one. You choose what looks good to others over what feels right to you. You choose to avoid discomfort instead of honoring your growth.
Fear-based decisions might provide short-term relief, but they erode long-term self-trust because you know you're not being honest with yourself.
The practice of rebuilding self-trust. Trust is rebuilt through consistent action over time. There's no shortcut, but there is a clear path. Start with small commitments. Don't make grand promises to yourself. Start small, tiny, manageable. Instead of, "I'm going to exercise every day," commit to 5 minutes of movement today. Instead of, "I'm going to completely transform my life," commit to one small choice that honors your authentic self today. Make the commitment small enough that you can actually keep it, then keep it. Each kept promise, no matter how small, deposits into your self-trust account. Practice listening to your intuition. Your intuition is always speaking. You've just learned to ignore it. Start paying attention. When you get a gut feeling about something, acknowledge it. Name it. Write it down. You don't have to act on it immediately, especially if it's about something big, but notice it. Track it. See if it turns out to be accurate. Over time, as you see your intuition proven right again and again, you'll start trusting it more. Honor your needs. Start treating your needs as valid, not selfish. Your need for rest, your need for solitude, your need for creative expression, your need for boundaries. When you honor your needs consistently, you send yourself the message, "What I need matters. I can trust myself to take care of me." This doesn't mean ignoring everyone else's needs. It means no longer treating your needs as less important than everyone else's. Follow through on boundary setting. Setting boundaries is one thing. Maintaining them is another. If you say no, mean no. Don't let people talk you out of it. Don't cave when they push back. Don't apologize for protecting yourself. Every time you maintain a boundary despite pressure, you strengthen self-trust. Make one aligned choice daily. Every day, make at least one choice that's aligned with your authentic self instead of your false self. Wear what you actually want to wear, not what you think you should. Say what you actually think instead of what's safe. Spend time on what energizes you instead of what's productive. Choose the option that feels right over the option that looks right. These choices don't have to be dramatic. Small, consistent alignment builds trust faster than occasional big gestures. Stop seeking external validation for internal decisions. When you have a decision to make, notice your impulse to ask everyone else what they think. Instead, ask yourself first. Sit with it. Feel into it. Trust your own wisdom. You can still seek input from trusted people, but make it advisory rather than determinative. The final decision comes from you, not from consensus. Practice self-compassion when you stumble. You will mess up. You'll make promises to yourself and break them. You'll ignore your intuition. You'll people-please when you meant to set boundaries. This doesn't mean you're hopeless. It means you're human. Self-trust isn't built through perfection. It's built through consistent effort and self-compassion when you fall short. Acknowledge the mistake, learn from it, recommit, keep going. Beating yourself up only reinforces the narrative that you can't be trusted. Compassionate accountability rebuilds trust. The relationship between self-trust and authenticity. You can't be authentic if you don't trust yourself, because authenticity requires making choices that might not make sense to others. It requires honoring truths that you can't always explain logically. But when you trust yourself, you can say, "I don't know why, but this feels right," and move forward with confidence. You can disagree with everyone else's opinion and still trust your own. You can make unconventional choices without needing them to make sense to anyone but you. That's the freedom self-trust provides, and that freedom is essential for living authentically.
The timeline for rebuilding trust. There's no fixed timeline. For some, self-trust returns relatively quickly once they start honoring themselves consistently. For others, especially those who've experienced deep self-betrayal, it takes longer. What matters is direction, not speed. Are you moving toward greater self-trust or away from it? If you're keeping more promises to yourself than you're breaking, you're heading in the right direction. If you're honoring your needs more often than abandoning them, you're building trust. If you're listening to your intuition more than ignoring it, you're strengthening the relationship with yourself. Progress, not perfection. Consistency, not intensity. That's how self-trust is rebuilt. One small, aligned choice at a time. Chapter 5. The Practice of Boundaries. Protecting your authentic self. You cannot find yourself again without learning to set and maintain boundaries. Boundaries are the protective structure that allows your authentic self to exist and flourish. Without boundaries, you'll continue abandoning yourself to meet others' needs. You'll continue performing instead of being. You'll continue losing yourself in relationships, work, and obligations. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out or becoming rigid. Boundaries are about defining where you end and others begin, about protecting your energy, time, and authenticity, about communicating your limits clearly and kindly. Why boundaries feel so hard? If you've lost yourself, chances are you struggle with boundaries. Here's why. You were taught that boundaries are selfish, that putting yourself first makes you a bad person, that your job is to accommodate, please, and serve others, even at your own expense. You fear conflict. Setting boundaries often means disappointing people, and if you're conflict-averse, you'll sacrifice your needs to keep the peace. You fear abandonment. You believe that if you set boundaries, people will leave, and because you've relied on external validation for your sense of worth, that fear is paralyzing. You don't know where your boundaries should be. You've spent so long adapting to others that you don't know what's reasonable to ask for. You feel guilty. Even when you know a boundary is necessary, guilt creeps in. You worry you're being too demanding, too difficult, too much. All of these are learned patterns, and they can be unlearned. Types of boundaries. Physical boundaries. These protect your body and personal space. Who can touch you, how and when, how close people can stand, whether you hug, shake hands, or prefer no physical contact. Physical boundaries also include your need for rest, sleep, and physical comfort. You're allowed to say no to physical demands that exceed your capacity. Emotional boundaries. These protect your emotional well-being. You're not responsible for other people's emotions. You don't have to absorb their anger, anxiety, or depression. You can feel compassion without taking on their emotional burden. Emotional boundaries also mean you get to choose who has access to your inner world. Time boundaries. Your time is finite. Time boundaries protect how you spend it. You're allowed to say no to invitations, requests, and obligations that don't align with your priorities. Time boundaries also mean you don't have to be available 24/7. You can turn off your phone. You can be unreachable. Your time belongs to you first. Mental boundaries. These protect your thoughts, values, and beliefs. You don't have to adopt other people's perspectives. You don't have to justify your worldview. You're entitled to your own opinions. Mental boundaries also mean you can end conversations that are draining, circular, or disrespectful of your perspective. Material boundaries. These protect your possessions and finances. You can say no to lending money or belongings. You can refuse to subsidize other people's choices.
You can protect your financial resources. Sexual boundaries. These define what you're comfortable with sexually and romantically. You never owe anyone sex, affection, or romantic attention. You get to define your yes and your no at every moment, and you can change your mind. How to set boundaries. Get clear on your limits. Before you can communicate boundaries to others, you need to know what they are. What makes you uncomfortable? What depletes your energy? What feels like a violation? What do you need to feel safe, respected, and authentic? These questions reveal where boundaries are needed. Start with low-stakes situations. Don't begin boundary setting with your most difficult relationship. Start small. Practice with acquaintances, strangers, or low-pressure situations. Say no to the coworker who always asks you to cover their shift. Decline the social invitation you don't want to attend. Don't answer texts immediately when you're busy. These smaller boundaries build your confidence for bigger ones.
Chapter 6. Creating a life that fits. Building around your authentic self. Finding yourself is not the end goal. The end goal is creating a life that actually fits who you are. Many people do the inner work. They reconnect with their authentic self. They process the grief. They rebuild self-trust. They set boundaries. But then they try to squeeze their authentic self back into the life they've already built. It doesn't work. You can't be your authentic self while living an inauthentic life. If your authentic self values creativity, but your life is structured around a corporate job with no creative outlet, there's going to be constant friction. If your authentic self needs solitude to recharge, but your life is filled with constant social obligations, you'll be perpetually drained. If your authentic self values adventure, but your life is built entirely around safety and predictability, you'll feel suffocated. Finding yourself again requires not just internal transformation, but external restructuring. You have to build a life around your authentic self, not force your authentic self to fit into the life you've already built. Auditing your current life. Before you can rebuild, you need to honestly assess what's currently not working. Career. Does your work align with your values? Does it utilize your strengths? Does it energize you or drain you? Are you in this career because it's what you genuinely want, or because it's what someone else wanted for you? Because it pays well? Because you've already invested so much? If you could design your work life from scratch, what would it look like? Relationships. Which relationships feel authentic and which feel performative? Who can you be completely yourself around, and who requires you to edit, suppress, or perform? Which relationships are reciprocal and which are one-sided? Which people in your life encourage your authenticity and which resist your growth? Daily routine. How do you actually spend your time? Track it for a week. How much of your day is spent on things that energize you versus deplete you? How much time do you spend on obligations versus choices? How much margin do you have, or are you constantly rushed? Environment. Does where you live reflect who you are? Do you feel at home in your home, or does it feel like someone else's space? Does your environment support your well-being or work against it? Social life. Are your social activities genuinely fulfilling, or are you showing up out of obligation? Do you have community that shares your values and interests? Are you getting the type of social connection your authentic self needs, whether that's deep one-on-one conversations or group activities or solitude? Personal practices. Do you have practices that nurture your authentic self, creativity, movement, spirituality, learning, rest? Or has your life become so full of obligations that there's no room for what feeds your soul?
The gap analysis. For each area, ask, what's the gap between where I am and where I need to be to live authentically? Some gaps might be small. You just need to add one new practice or remove one draining commitment. Other gaps might be massive. You might need to change careers, end relationships, move cities. Don't judge the size of the gap. Just get clear on what it is. Making the changes. Here's where it gets real, because identifying the gap is one thing. Actually restructuring your life is another. Some changes you can make immediately. Others will take time. Some will be painful. All will require courage. Quick wins. Start with changes that are immediately within your control. Declining invitations that drain you. Creating a morning or evening routine that honors your needs. Creating time weekly for activities that feed your soul. Unfollowing accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. Saying no to new obligations. Rearranging your physical space to reflect who you are. These might seem small, but they're powerful. Each one sends the message, I'm building my life around my authentic self now.
Medium-term changes. These require more planning, but are still manageable. Shifting your work schedule or responsibilities to better align with your energy. Gradually transitioning relationships that aren't working. Pursuing education or training in an area that actually interests you. Building new community around your genuine interests. Developing a side project that reflects your authentic creativity or contribution. These changes take months, not days, but they're progress. Major restructuring. Sometimes finding yourself again requires big changes. Leaving a career that's fundamentally misaligned. Ending a relationship that requires you to abandon yourself. Moving to a new place that better fits your authentic lifestyle. Starting a business or creative endeavor that's been calling you. Completely restructuring your finances to support a different life. These are not decisions to make impulsively. They require careful planning, support, and often professional guidance. But avoiding them just because they're difficult means staying stuck in an inauthentic life. Dealing with the fear. The biggest obstacle to creating a life that fits is fear. Fear of financial insecurity, fear of disappointing people, fear of failure, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of losing what you have in pursuit of what you want. These fears are valid. Making significant life changes is genuinely risky. But staying in a life that doesn't fit carries its own risks. The slow death of your authentic self, the regret of never trying, the wondering what could have been. Risk mitigation strategies. Build a financial cushion before making major changes. Create a transition plan rather than burning everything down at once. Get professional support, therapy, career coaching, financial planning. Test changes on a small scale before going all in. Build community with people who've made similar transitions. You don't have to be reckless, but you do have to be brave. The myth of having it all figured out. You don't need to have a complete blueprint before you start making changes. You just need to know the direction. If you know your current career doesn't fit, you don't need to know exactly what the right career is before you start exploring. If you know your current relationship is draining your authentic self, you don't need to have your next relationship lined up before you create space. If you know your current city doesn't support your well-being, you don't need to know exactly where you'll move before you start researching options. Trust that clarity comes through action, not before it. Take one step toward alignment, see what that reveals. Take the next step. The path appears as you walk it. Living the questions. Poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote,
Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. As you rebuild your life around your authentic self, you'll have more questions than answers. What's my purpose? What kind of work would feel meaningful? Where should I live? What kind of relationships do I want? How do I want to spend my time? Don't rush to answer them. Live into them. Experiment. Try things. Notice what resonates and what doesn't. Your authentic life emerges through exploration, not through planning. The ongoing practice. Creating a life that fits is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice of alignment. Because you'll keep growing. Your authentic self at 30 is different from your authentic self at 40 or 50. Your needs will shift. Your values will evolve. Your interests will change. A life that fits means staying attentive to those shifts and being willing to adjust. It means regular check-ins. Is this still working? Is this still me? What needs to change? It means never getting so attached to the life you've built that you're unwilling to evolve it when you've outgrown it. Finding yourself again is not about building a perfect life and staying there forever. It's about building a life that honors who you are right now, with the understanding that you'll keep growing and your life will need to grow with you. That's not instability. That's aliveness.
If you've made it this far, you've taken a journey through the landscape of self-loss and self-recovery. You understand how you lost yourself through the gradual erosion of authenticity, through relationships that required performance, through careers that consumed your identity, through trauma that forced you into survival mode, through cultural displacement, through years of people-pleasing. You've learned how to excavate your authentic self by distinguishing what's yours from what's borrowed, by reconnecting with your younger self, by identifying your true values, by listening to your body, by practicing self-inquiry. You've acknowledged the grief, the loss of old identities, relationships that can't survive your authenticity, futures you're not going to have, time you can't reclaim. You've begun rebuilding trust with yourself through small commitments, by honoring your intuition, by keeping promises to yourself, by making aligned choices. You've learned about boundaries, how to set them, maintain them, and enforce them without guilt or apology. And you started creating a life that fits by auditing what's not working, identifying the gaps, making changes both small and large. But here's what I want you to understand as we close. Finding yourself again is not a destination, it's a way of living. It's the ongoing practice of checking in with yourself, of noticing when you're drifting from authenticity and course correcting, of continuing to evolve as you grow and change. There will be times when you lose yourself again, when old patterns resurface, when you slip back into people-pleasing or self-abandonment or living for others' approval. That's not failure. That's being human. What matters is that you now have the awareness to recognize it when it happens, the tools to find your way back, the commitment to keep returning to yourself no matter how many times you drift. The courage it takes. Living authentically requires immense courage. It's easier to perform, safer to conform, more comfortable to stay small, less confrontational to keep the peace. Authenticity is not the easy path, it's the honest one. It means disappointing people, making unpopular choices, standing alone sometimes, facing uncertainty. But it also means waking up and recognizing yourself, making decisions with clarity instead of confusion, building relationships based on genuine connection, doing work that feels meaningful, living in alignment with your values, experiencing the profound peace that comes from being true to yourself. The ripple effect. When you find yourself again, when you start living authentically, it doesn't just change your life, it changes the lives of everyone around you. You give other people permission to be authentic too. You show them it's possible to break free from performance and expectation. You demonstrate that there's another way to live. Your children, if you have them, learn that they don't have to abandon themselves to be loved. Your friends discover they can show you their real selves. Your colleagues see that success doesn't require sacrificing authenticity. Your courage becomes contagious. A letter to your future self. I want you to imagine yourself 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Imagine that you've continued this work, that you've kept coming back to yourself, that you've built a life that actually fits who you are. What does that version of you want to say to you right now? They want to tell you it was worth it, that every difficult conversation was worth it, every boundary you set was worth it, every change you made was worth it, every moment of uncertainty was worth it. They want to tell you that the life you're about to build, the authentic one, is better than anything you could have imagined while living inauthentically. They want to tell you to trust yourself, to be patient, to keep going even when it's hard. They want to thank you for having the courage to start. The invitation. Finding yourself again is not about becoming perfect. It's not about having everything figured out. It's not about never struggling or doubting. It's about coming home to yourself, about building a relationship with yourself based on honesty, trust, and compassion, about living in alignment with who you actually are instead of who you think you should be. The journey is not linear. There will be setbacks and detours and moments when you question everything. But there will also be moments of profound recognition, moments when you catch a glimpse of your authentic self and think, there you are, I've missed you. Moments when you make a choice that feels completely right, even if you can't explain why. Moments when you realize you're finally living your life instead of someone else's version of it. Those moments make it all worth it. Your work begins now. This audiobook has given you the map, but you have to walk the path. No one can find you for you. No one can give you back to yourself. This is work only you can do. But you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do it all at once. Just take the next step. Make the next aligned choice. Honor the next truth. Set the next boundary. Ask the next question. One step at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time, you find your way back to yourself. And every step you take towards your authentic self is a step away from the pain of self-abandonment. Every boundary you set is a declaration of your worth. Every truth you speak is an act of courage. Every aligned choice is a homecoming. The person you've been looking for, the one you lost, the one you're trying to find again, has been with you this entire time. They've been buried under expectations and performance and protection, but they never disappeared. They're still there, waiting, hoping you'll come back, ready to live fully, love deeply, and be seen completely. All you have to do is clear away what's covering them. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Trust what they know. Honor what they need. And live the life they've been dreaming of while you were busy being who everyone else needed you to be. You haven't lost yourself forever. You've just forgotten how to hear yourself. But you're listening now, and that's how it begins. Welcome home.